On Friday, March 17th in the year 2000, in the cool highlands of Kanungu, southwestern Uganda, more than 1,000 believers arrived in their best clothes. They sang, they prayed, they slaughtered cattle for a feast and stacked crates of soft drinks. They had been told this was the final gathering before the end of the world. By midday, hundreds were invited into a simple church with a brick wall and a corrugated metal roof. The windows were boarded from the outside. The doors were locked. Minutes later, flames climbed the rafters. The singing became screams, then silence. At first, the authorities called it a mass suicide, but as investigators moved from Kanungu to other properties tied to the same movement, they began exhuming body pits packed with corpses, many of them poisoned or strangled. What looked like one horrific day became something else, a network of killings culminating in an inferno. By the end of March 2000, the death toll was staggering. Estimates range between 778 and 924 lives lost. Men, women, and children, all victims of blind devotion and deadly manipulation. This would become one of the worst cult tragedies in modern history. This is the story of Credonia Mwerinde, a woman her followers called the visionbearer. It's the story of how faith, fear, and authority fused into fire, and how a celebration turned into a cremation.
You're not able to see me clearly. Things just blur to you. You have to stumble around lately through crowds and are not able to see even people's faces close up to you clearly.
That's true.
You've told me nothing about your condition. Is that
No,
correct?
I haven't.
Give that little sweetheart a little bit of love. Thank you, baby. Peace. Now, take your glasses off. Just dare in our faith. We've seen Sister Brown here who was blind, totally healed. Saw one of our sisters blind from her childhood. It could be hysterical blindness, whatever. We're not concerned. She was blind and could not see. Now, look at my face. I'm going to hold up some fingers. You concentrate hard. I love you. The people love you. And most importantly, Christ loves you. What do you see? How many fingers?
3.
"20 years before Kanungu, the world witnessed a chilling prophecy of what was to come. On November 18, 1978, in Jonestown, Guyana, after US Congressman Leo Ryan was murdered at the nearby airstrip, cult leader James Jones ordered his followers to drink a cyanide-laced fruit punch. Over 900 people died, men, women, and children, in an act of orchestrated obedience. Jonestown began with promises of equality and justice, but ended with poison and mass graves. The phrase, "drinking the Kool-Aid," became a grim shorthand for what happens when faith is turned into a weapon. 2 decades later, in Uganda, that same formula, charisma, isolation, prophecy, and fear would ignite again. Only this time, the savior was a woman. To understand Kanungu, you have to understand the times. Uganda in the 1980s and 1990s was a nation clawing its way out of the shadow of war and dictatorship. The ghosts of Idi Amin and Milton Obote still haunted the lands. Villages were rebuilding amid deep poverty, and HIV/AIDS was cutting through families like wildfire. In chaos, people look for meaning. In uncertainty, they look for leaders who promise hope. And that was the Uganda into which Credonia Mwerinde and Joseph Kibwetere emerged. Mwerinde, born July 30th, 1952 in Ntungamo district, was the daughter of a Roman Catholic family. Outwardly devout, yet inwardly ambitious, she claimed to receive visions of the Virgin Mary, warning of the world's end. Kibwetere, born 1932, was a respected Catholic lay preacher and former politician. When their paths crossed in 1989, they found in each other a shared delusion and a way to turn faith into power. That same year, they founded the movement for the restoration of the 10 Commandments of God, or would say MRTC. To the faithful, it sounded holy. By the mid-1990s, the MRTC had expanded across Uganda's southwest. The movement owned farmland, dormitories, and schools. Life inside followed strict, almost monastic rules. Members wore white and green robes, worked communal farms, and surrendered all possessions to the church. Sex was banned, even for married couples. Speaking without permission was a sin. On certain days, silence was absolute. Followers communicated only with gestures, believing even idle words could offend God. Children were indoctrinated in movement-run schools, taught that obedience would save them when the world ended. Every sermon, every command was said to come from messages the Virgin Mary revealed to Credonia Mwerinde, the visionbearer, and no one questioned her. Those who did disappeared. As the millennium drew near, Mwerinde announced a revelation. The world would end on December 31st, 1999. Followers sold their homes, cattle, and farmland. They handed over money, clothing, and even their children's inheritance. The faithful gathered across compounds to fast and pray. That night, they waited for the apocalypse, through hymns, through silence, through dawn. But when the sun rose on January 1st, 2000, the world was still standing. Whispers began. Some wanted their money back, others wanted to leave. And for the first time, fear turned inward towards the leaders themselves. But Credonia had an answer ready. She said the Virgin Mary had spoken again. The true day of salvation was coming, and it would be on March 17, 2000. And only those who gathered at Kanungu would be saved. This will be the final feast before heaven. They came from all corners of southwestern Uganda. Farmers, teachers, children drowned by hope, fear, and prophecy. Witnesses recalled a carnival atmosphere. Bulls were slaughtered, music played, drinks flowed. There was laughter, prayer, and tears. It was supposed to be the day the world ended. Instead, it was the day their world burned. At noon, hundreds were led into the church, a simple brick building with a metal roof. Once everybody was inside, the doors were bolted and the windows boarded from outside. Then someone poured petrol around the building and struck a match. Flames climbed the walls. The singing turned to screams. Witnesses from nearby fields said the heat was so intense no one could get close. When the fire died down, all that remained was ash, twisted metal, and silence. Initial counts said 330 to 530 died inside the church, but that was only the beginning.
Who's Willa Mae Conley? What a sensation about you. Did you once lose a loved one, I think the name of James?
Yes, that's my brother.
He was 14 years of age. And he was reading something, and someone asked him for what he had, and he didn't want to give it.
Yes,
and
he did.
that person shot him to death.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
I'm saying this to give you faith
Yes.
so that you can mount up, because you've been feeling pain here in the chest
Yes.
and in the back.
Yes.
And you injured your foot some time ago, and
Yes,
you've been
I
having
did.
constant pain in it, where you had to move around with a chair.
Yes, I did.
I do not know you, and you've told me or no one else the things I just mentioned.
No,
Is
you
that
sure
true?
haven't.
Now, where's your pain?
Don't mean it, dear.
Four days after the fire, investigators began searching other ROTC compounds. What they found turned the tragedy into a nightmare. At Buhunaga, 153 bodies. At Rugazi, 155 more, many stabbed or poisoned. At Rushojwa, a pit 6 feet deep held 81 corpses, almost women and children. The killing had been happening for weeks, maybe months before the fire. By the end of March, the combined death toll neared 900. Authorities no longer called it suicide, they called it murder. President Yoweri Museveni condemned the massacre, calling it mass murder for monetary gain. The investigation revealed that the leaders had collected vast sums from followers before killing them, money that vanished with the leadership. Joseph Kibwetere was the public face, a respected Catholic elder whose image lent legitimacy to the movement. But the true architect, investigators said, was Credonia Mwerinde, the visionbearer. She dictated the rules, set the prophecies, and controlled every aspect of life inside the movement. Even Kibwetere, some survivors claimed, was just a mouthpiece, a puppet manipulated by her apocalyptic visions. After March 17th, both vanished. Warrants were issued for Mwerinde, Kibwetere, and fellow leader Dominic Kataribabo, but none were ever arrested. Some believed they died in the fire, others believed they escaped. To this day, no definitive answer exists. To understand Kanungu, you must understand the machinery of control that made it possible. Isolation. Compounds were built in remote areas far from roads and outsiders. Members cut off contact with friends and family, their world shrinking to the movement alone. They also used obedience. Every order, from fasting to silence, was framed as divine instruction from the Virgin Mary through Credonia. To disobey her was to defy heaven itself. Sacrifice. Followers sold everything they owned. By surrendering their wealth, they surrendered their independence. There was no going back. The ticking clock. The fixed prophecy, first December 31st, then March 17th, created urgency. Each delay was explained as a test of faith, pushing believers deeper into disobedience. And there was a punishment for doubt. Those who questioned the leadership vanished. Later, excavations proved what others had whispered. The disappearances were not spiritual, they were fatal. They were not fit. It was a captivity dressed as devotion. The parallels between Jonestown and Kanungu are haunting. Both Jim Jones and Credonia Mwerinde claimed to be divine vessels, the chosen voice of salvation. Jones built his utopia in Guyanese jungle. Mwerinde built hers in the hills of Uganda. Both made escape nearly impossible. Jonestown's end came after violence against outsiders. Kanungu's came after failed prophecy and the threat of defection. In both, leaders saw death as control's final proof. Their followers believed they were walking into heaven. They walked into traps. In the weeks following the fire, Uganda was gripped by disbelief. Journalists and police dug through ash and graves. Families waited for words of loved ones that would never return. Some compounds were seized by the state, others decayed into the earth. The main site at Kanungu eventually became a tea plantation. Each year, survivors and families gather quietly to pray, to remember. Their pain lingers like smoke that never clears. International headlines drew comparisons to Jonestown, Heaven's Gate, and Wako. But Kanungu was uniquely African-born, not of Western cult culture, but of local suffering, poverty, and misplaced faith. And through it all, one question still haunts Uganda. Where is Credonia Mwerinde? She was last seen on March 17, 2000. Some investigators insist she died in the church fire. Others claim she escaped, disguised among her victims. To this day, she remains listed among Uganda's most wanted fugitives, and maybe that's the most haunting part. On March 17, 2000, a congregation walked into a church in Kanungu, believing they were stepping into heaven. What they entered was a trap. When the smoke cleared, the ground itself gave up its secret pits of bodies, silent testimonies to a nightmare that had been unfolding for years. We may never know where Credonia Mwerinde went or exactly how many lives she took with her, but we do know this: holy words can kill, and blind faith can burn brighter than any flame. The best defense against another Kanungu is not fear, but discernment, truth over thrill, questions over compliance, and character over charisma. Because even the devil knows how to quote the scriptures.